Okay. Now they'll hear us. All right. I really think it's fixed this time.
And you blocked Venger off. That's good.
Hey, where am I? There I am.
Can you hear us
Can you hear us
now?
now? Hello?
There we go.
Now we have
We
sound.
got it.
All right. Well,
Whee!
once again, we have kept our near perfect score of not being able to open in any kind of technical capacity. So, hello everyone. This is the RPG Pundit here, the final boss of internet shitlords, and this is Inappropriate Characters. And tonight we are joined as always by Venger and Job, aka Florida Man RPG, aka desperately needs to go to our Streamlabs account. And we're also joined tonight by our special guest, the Basic Expert. So
Thank you.
Hey!
welcome to the show. You were supposed to be here a few weeks ago, and then we had to move you or something, and now you're finally here. Very good.
It works out better. I was in California at the time, and it would have been hard to stream back in June, I think it was. So I would have done it, but
we probably wouldn't have had any audio. All right, so I'm guessing that a lot of the people on the chat right now, and a lot of people who are going to watch this episode eventually, might already know who you are. They might know you from your YouTube channel, but there's probably also some people who have never heard of you before. So first and foremost, how about you give us a brief description of who you are in the RPG hobby world?
I'm just a gamer. I'm the forever GM in my group, and one day I just decided, like, I'm gonna just start making videos. So I started making videos, and for some reason people started watching. And then when I started making videos I was already well into the OSR. So after a while I was like, I kind of want to try making my own game content a little bit. So I've started to dip my toes into that. I made it's not an OSR game, but a cowboy game. It's my own little system that I made, but yeah, I do a lot of art for role-playing games too. I've done art for Chaosium, for Call of Cthulhu, done a lot of work for Traveler, and other projects as well. Some companies that we might get into, not specific companies because I don't want to get in too much trouble, but some companies I probably never want to work with again. But yeah, I just love role-playing games. I started about 10, 12 years ago, really into the hobby, and I've never looked back since.
Well, you're already more qualified than Dolly Pop.
So what inspired you to start making videos, and what were the type of videos you made at the beginning, and what type of videos do you make now?
Well, at the start, it was just like, I've been game mastering for a long time, and I was like, I could talk about that kind of stuff and like what I know. Not as much as probably any of you guys, but you guys have been playing and in this hobby much longer than me. But talking about games I like, I still kind of do that. Like, I went through Basic Fantasy. I did like a whole series, like going through the rules of Basic Fantasy, doing Classic Traveler right now because I really love Classic Traveler. And so that's kind of the kind of stuff I'm doing now. And I do a little bit of commentary on news in role-playing games, and what's going on within the hobby, because I feel like that's important. And the state of the hobby definitely needs some pushing back on a lot of points to get it hopefully back on track. So I talk a little bit about that stuff too.
Okay, but you don't do like live streaming of your games or something like that. You're like me or Venger. You do videos about gaming, not videos of you gaming. Okay. No,
watching my play group play, probably it's fun for us, but I don't think it'd be fun for other people to watch. So it wouldn't make good content.
So what got you into the OSR?
Probably initially, he's here in the chat. Brendan here in the chat. He's a player in my current game. He's been in my games for a long time. He put up with a lot of my 5e games back in the day, and he kept telling me a couple times, like, hey, you should check out these OSR games. And I've always been interested because I started in the much maligned 4th edition at the time, not knowing what it was. You go to the store and you're like, or the game shop, and you're like, I want to play D&D, and that's whatever edition is popular at the time or is out is what's on the shelf. So that's what I picked up. and ran that for a while, and then 5th edition. And yeah, Brendan in the chat here told me to pick up some games. I picked up White Box, fantastic medieval adventure game, was one of the first ones, and Basic Fantasy. And I picked up some of your products, Pundit. I have Lion and Dragon.
Excellent.
And Star Adventure. So, and a couple other ones. And I eventually went and got some print-on-demand copies of older editions of D&D, and I really love that. I'm a big fan of like the Rule Cyclopedia. I think that's one of the greatest role-playing game books ever printed. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. And let me think here. Well, I guess I should open up to my co-hosts here. Joe, Benjer, you guys have any questions for Basic Expert?
Yeah, so the first thing I wanted to ask you about, John, was your cowboy game, Cow Punchers. Can you tell us, a little bit about it? What the game is like, and then a little bit about the mechanics, if you could.
And why isn't it OSR?
Because I'll answer what the system is and then why. So it's a dice pool D6 game. I know there's a million of those out there, but it's skill based. I kind of took some influence from Classic Traveler in some respects, because I like the idea of taking damage to like attribute scores and like seeing that death spiral. So it has that aspect of it to it. There's like a host of skills. You just add skill points to those skills. The more skills that you get, the more skill points that you get equates to more dice that you can roll, and you succeed on a 5 or 6. So it's very like pass fail. I just tried to I took it as a challenge, because I was like, I wanted to see if I could, for my first kind of project, could I make a game that's roughly playable that people will have a good time with, and could I do it in like 20 something pages? And the Cow Punchers is like, including a little scenario at the end of the book, it's like 24 pages long. So super simple, easy to pick up, probably good for one shots, although I think you could take it in a longer campaign as well if you wanted to. And the reason it's not OSR is I'm of the mind that like some games, some settings, the game system informs the setting, and I think the OSR does a lot of really good things. And I just felt like for me personally, in my abilities as a fledgling newbie game designer, I just felt like I didn't know how to stretch that system to kind of feel like the Western game that I wanted. And so I just elected to just sort of start from scratch. I know like Miguel from the Red Room's done it. He has his Wretched Country, and I have that as well. I did the cover for his book there. And I think he did a fantastic job with that. So I saw that and I'm like, oh, he did do it. Someone could do it. So, and I know like, I forget the name of it. There's another OSR that uses BX as like a framework for Western games. I don't remember what it's called now, but
what are they called?
It's like Tall Tales.
Workshop is just coming out with Gunslinger, which is also going to be an OSR Wild Western game.
Yeah.
Now, my favorite cowboy game is Aces and Eights, which is not exactly OSR, but it's kind of like OSR adjacent. Like it's sort of close to Dungeons and Dragons, but not quite.
Yeah, I mean, I took some influence from, because I like the deadliness and the actual risks that occur in the OSR. It's partly why I left a lot of modern gaming for the OSR. So I took a lot of that and kind of melded it into its own thing for me and what I wanted. But I use like reaction rolls and random encounter tables and stuff like that in it. So there's a lot of older stuff that does inform a lot of Cow Punch as well. But it's not like there's no D20. It's all D6s. So,
Venger, any questions from you?
I know we've talked a lot on Twitter.
Yeah.
We have a lot of discussions on there. What's your basic, I don't know, approach or style? I mean, obviously you're more of a traditional OSR kind of gamer and creator, but having already said that, what what's your, your motif or raison d'etre, or what is, I don't know, the fuel behind your gaming?
Oh, I don't know. I just really love doing it. It's a nice escape. I love escaping into a game world for a couple hours with friends and eating unhealthy snacks and drinking beer and drinking soda and stuff like that. That's always a good time. I don't know. The moment I got into this hobby, I just realized I really loved it, because I've always liked designing things too. When I was a kid, like in junior high and stuff like that, I was trying to make my own card games and board games and stuff like that, and always had fun doing that. So when I finally ran into role-playing games, I was like, oh, this is kind of the same thing, because I can construct my own setting. I could mod the rules however I want to do whatever I want them to do. And so it just really felt like this is the thing I've been looking for. And so I don't know, I just like creating stuff. I mean, I'm an illustrator, an artist, and so I've just always loved creating things. So I like making new things, and I like seeing people enjoy things I've made too. That gives me a lot of satisfaction.
Are you self-taught as an artist, or did you go to school for it, or?
I dropped out of school for it. Art school is expensive, and it's don't, to everyone in the chat, don't go to art school. It's expensive. It's a waste of money. You can buy books and just practice and learn on your own.
If you go to art school, you end up like Zach Smith. So don't do it.
Yeah, a cautionary tale, if ever there was one.
Charlotte Williams from the live chat, she has a question for you. Why Western specifically?
Well, there's not a lot of Western games out there. In my game, the rules, it's not Weird West either. It's just like if you wanted to play like a historical Western game, or you wanted to play like something more like your favorite spaghetti Western movie. But there's no magic. There's no magic items. There's no monsters. It's just straight, let's play a straight Western game. No weirdness to it. There's people out there that want to use my system to make Weird West stuff and are going to, and I think that's great. I encourage people to make stuff for my game. Please do. But for me personally, I just wanted to really focus it in on Western and keeping it. I'm not like you, Pundit, where I'm like super authentic. I don't want to call it like authentic, but I wanted it to feel grounded and realistic. So,
what's your favorite Western?
Long authentic Western campaign a couple of years ago, and so like it was, again, no magic, nothing supernatural. It was just pure history, and it was set from 1876 to 1882, which was kind of like the peak years, the years that what most people imagined the Wild West to have been, what happened in those years, right? So it started with like Dodge City, and it ended with the Earp revenge ride after Tombstone, you know.
Yeah, it's cool. I love that kind of stuff, because like you look at the stuff that went on during then, and I feel like there's plenty of stuff that just happens in the everyday sort of life of people back then that is worth, I think, an adventure or an encounter. I don't need zombies and ghosts to make it interesting. The world's already weird and interesting enough. So
I mean, some of the stories that are like historical things that happened in the Wild West are better than almost any Western movie, you know. Like you look at this stuff and you go like, well, why don't they just do this? Why do they like remake it into some other kind of story, right? Because this is just so insane, you know, like the stuff that happened in Deadwood and in Dodge City. I mean, Dodge City, the mayor of Dodge City had a pet bear that worked in the bar that he owned, you know, like, and then one year they just decided to kill him and eat him for Christmas, you know, like it's just insane. The past is another country, totally. So no, there's all kinds of, like, there's a Hoodoo Brown and his gang in Las Vegas, you know, that like were like basically they had created a criminal city there, you know, like it was nuts. Yeah, I know. Then the whole, you know, Earps versus Cowboys thing, you know, it was
sure.
quite remarkable.
Yeah, to answer Venger's question, I really like the Dollar Trilogy, of course. That's a must. Once Upon a Time in the West is a favorite of mine. Tombstone, of course.
Absolutely.
That one's a classic. I like a lot of the spaghetti westerns, like Django. What's it called? I think it's The Mercenary. has that. I think his name's Franco Nero. He was the lead in a lot of like the Great Value brand spaghetti westerns from the Sergio Leone films. So I like a lot of those films. Yeah.
Awesome. Me too.
All right, John.
Right.
So you mentioned that oh, sorry. Did you have a follow-up, Vendor?
I was just going to say High Plains Drifter. That's the only one that you didn't mention. That
I don't think I've seen that one. I'll have to look it up.
oh my God, that's
Oh yeah.
aside from the trilogy of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I think High Plains Drifter is my favorite Clint Eastwood Western. So
Okay.
it's really, really good. It's dark, kind of weird almost, but it's also straight up like spaghetti Western. It's really good.
I like Unforgiven as well. I feel like that's a really good movie too. So,
Mhm.
didn't mention that one, but I love that movie too.
So you, when we were chatting via email, you mentioned that you were working also maybe on a Conquistadors and Aztecs OSR game. Have you worked any more on that in the?
I'm trying slowly. It's kind of been a big. I feel like I'm banging my head against the wall to it. So like anyone that's waiting for that, I got like 45 pages written of it. But I just wanted to make sure I do it right. So it's been a journey, I guess, and trying to get to where I'm at at that point. So I don't know when it'll be ready or what. It'll be a low magic sort of thing. So magic will be in it. Maybe because Pundit, you're here. What I'm struggling is magic, like what the Aztecs did, like good valuable resources on what they did and what they believed and how they did it. That's beyond just like the ritual sacrifice and stuff like that. It just seems like they did a lot of divination and scrying and things like that. And so I want to have that in there, but like it's obviously not enough to do like a traditional OSR. Here's a list of like 150 spells, So I have your Lion and Dragon, and I like the way you did it, but I don't want to just rip you off.
Well, I mean, no, you could do something where the magic system is similar to Lion and Dragon, but use it. You'd have to do some serious research into Aztec magic, a lot of which I know involved, even the ones that didn't involve sacrifices, a lot of them involved blood, right? Like they felt that blood was like the most powerful human substance, right? So they would because
the gods gave it up.
Magicians would draw their own blood in order to charge the magical works that they were doing, And they did divination.
I found a few interesting things. Like one of them I saw was like you could make they'd make like little paper figures and then kill a rooster and sprinkle its blood on the paper figure and animate the figure. And so I was like, oh, I could make that like a cool little spell for use in like scouting ahead, or like I could imagine players using something like that in creative ways. So I'm just trying to figure stuff out like that, and it's been really hard because I want to make sure again that I do it right. And I kind of want to do it just to make people mad too, because I know people will be mad.
Well, here's a question then related to this. So are you Latino or Latinx or a breakfast taco?
How dare you?
I guess my pronouns are Latino or breakfast taco. I'll go with those two.
So, but are you American born?
Yes, yeah. I'm like third generation, so I'm quite removed.
¿Hablas algo de español? Es lo que estoy tratando de llegar.
Yeah, I don't speak that much Spanish.
Okay, well, there's the first problem, right? Because if you were able to have a conversation with me, that means you'd be able to look at actual, because there's probably a ton of stuff on. I mean, I haven't done a lot of research on this myself, right? Not since I was like, when I was like 19, I did a summer internship in the Mayan ruins at Tulum, but if you see, and that was actually where I started studying Spanish seriously, because I'm half Latino on my mother's side, but my Spanish wasn't that great until I So I, started having an academic interest in it. But the thing is that a lot of the resources about Aztec magic that would be probably the most credible would likely be in Spanish. So
I mean, I can look at it and read it.
To brush up.
I can look at it and read it and know what it's saying. It's when people speak it to me super fast, I don't get it, because my parents were never taught it, and I've tried to make an effort to try and learn it on my own, but I'm still like, it's like trying to rediscover that connection back to something that was lost in your family, because
your family are descended from Mexico.
Yes, like
Okay.
northern Mexico. So
have you ever been to Mexico?
a couple times, yeah, down
Couple
into Baja and northern Mexico, kind of where my family was originally from. But I don't have any close family that's still there. I did that ancestry.com thing, so like I'm like half Spaniard, half indigenous peoples of Mexico, according to that thing. And one interesting thing I learned on there was I've had ancestors that were in California since the Anza expeditions. So that was pretty weird and nuts. But yeah, my grandparents never taught it to my parents. They could speak it, but they were like, we want you to be American, and we don't want you to we don't want you to learn it. So
like that was not an unusual thing, right? But you'd have a lot of Hispanic Americans that would even the ones that especially the ones that had been there for generations and generations, right? But even a lot of immigrants were like, no, you're in America, so learn English.
Yeah.
Which in the chat room, St. Michael said that he had the same experience. His parents wouldn't speak any Spanish in the house.
And I get the reason for it, and it totally makes sense to me, like why my grandparents and great grandparents thought that way. But it makes me kind of sad, because like I would have really loved to learn Spanish. It does feel I'm trying to, like I said, make an effort now to learn it, but I don't know. I wish I didn't have to do that.
Yeah, it would have been easier.
I knew some Spanish from my childhood, right? Both of my parents, my dad speaks multiple languages. My mom speaks Spanish and English. And so I got I had some basis in Spanish from childhood, right? But it was very much a child's Spanish, right? So I had to really learn the grammar and expand my vocabulary and everything else. But that made it a lot easier than if I'd had nothing. I knew a guy, very good friend of mine, that he immigrated to Canada from Chile when he was like 7 years old, right? And so when he arrived in Canada, he spoke no English, right? By the time he was an adult, he spoke no Spanish. He completely lost the language that he'd spoken for the first 6.5 years of his life.
That makes sense, though. I mean, he spoke another language for more of his life than that one. But yeah.
It's crazy. But okay, so here's a fun poll for our audience. We've got the basic expert here, right? He is third generation Mexican descended American. Spent most of his life in the United States, visited Mexico a couple of times, doesn't speak any Spanish or almost any Spanish. And then we got me. I'm Latino on my mother's side. I've been living for, 18 years in South America. Speak perfectly fluent Spanish to the point that in the regional dialect where I live, it takes people a long time to figure out that I'm not a native speaker. And have done a lot of thorough research on these sorts of subjects, history degree, religious studies degree, etc. Right? Which of the two of us would Wizards of the Coast be more likely to hire for an ethnic adventure? I'm gonna
go.
Also, take note. I mean, I know that I don't tend to show my face, but you guys have sometimes seen my hands in videos. Obviously, my skin is a lot lighter than the basic experts. That's an important detail, because I think that's the first thing they're going to care about. One thing they won't care about at all, I think, is how good either of us are at game design. In fact, we're both at a disadvantage because we've actually played a lot of D&D and written games before. You know, like that's not stuff they look for.
Well, and they would look at me and be like, "Oh, this guy's great," and then I'd speak some wrong think opinion, and they'd be like, "Nah, he's out. He's a white supremacist."
Well, the first entry we got here from Victor Gorchev, he says, neither. The basic expert doesn't have a side cut and hates the term Latinx. Ironcaster says, I'm pretty sure they'd hire a British person purely to spite pundit. I don't know if they'd do that. Well, maybe if by British person you mean like someone of Pakistani descent or something like that, you know. So Charlotte Williams says if he grows a fro, walks with a limp, and tells everyone he's gay, basic expert hands down. So you're a
like
better diversity choice, but you're not diverse enough yet. Damn it, you got to do something about that.
It sounds like too much work.
Not really.
Way too much work.
You need to add some identity flair.
One listen to the Basic Experts Monday live stream, and he's right out. Yeah, fair enough. Of course. Ironcaster said, well, pundit's already blacklisted, so yeah, that's true. All right, any other questions, either from my co-hosts or from the live chat for the Basic Expert?
Yeah, I do actually. So, John, you also told me that you're working on possibly a supplement for Invisible College.
Yeah, so
What's
I
that all
wrote
about?
it's a firearms thing, firearms supplement. I'm kind of a gun nut too. It's probably another reason Wizards wouldn't hire me. I love firearms. I'm a firearm owner, and I even build my own firearms. So, not that I'm an expert on firearms, but I know more than maybe some other people do. And so I thought it would be cool. I have the Invisible College as well, and I was reading through it, and I'm like, this is great. But the one thing that really kind of seemed like a really cool character that I would want to play would be a Templar in the game who doesn't do magic and is just going to go in Rainbow Six style, kicking down doors and shooting Black Lodge people in the face. And I just thought that would be really cool, and I wanted to make rules for that. So yeah, it's currently in the works through Well of Erd, which published Invisible College. So hopefully it'll be released soon. I just spoke with the publisher, and they had a little bit of a delay, but it should be ready hopefully soon. So
that's excellent, because I've had people asking about that, because at one point I forgot that it wasn't out yet, because of course you talked to me about it, right? And so I mentioned in some video that there was a source book for it, and everyone was like, where can I get that? Well, who did that? Where is it? And then I was like, oh shit, it's not out yet, actually.
Yeah.
So there's buzz for your gun book there.
That's cool. Yeah, it has rules for because it has body armor in it, so levels 2 to 4. So like ceramic plate armor and stuff like that. And the armor will break down based on the number of hits that it takes. It might feel a little crunchy to some people, but I feel like to really make guns feel deadly, you kind of have to get into that crunch a little bit. And Victor Gorchev here in the chat, he has his own OSR gun rules too. His are probably more like John Woo, and mine's more like Rainbow Six. So,
which I think fits Invisible College a bit better, right? Because this is Invisible College there's a lot of stuff there related to like special services and espionage and stuff like that, but it's meant to be a realistic type of thing, and not an action movie type of thing, but actually, this supplement is going to be, even though it's technically for Invisible College, it's basically an OSR modern guns and armor supplement that could be used for any modern setting OSR game, frankly, right?
Yeah, and it's short. I think it'll end up being like 25 pages. It's not super long. Yeah, and it has rules for various kinds of guns too. So I tried to include some of the most popular guns that a lot of modern militaries and law enforcement agencies use. So you have your Glocks, your M4s, AKs, all that kind of stuff's in it. So
fantastic.
Definitely sounds cool. I was in Pundit's Invisible College game for a year. And that was one thing I did notice after a while. I was like, oh, it's pretty hard to kill somebody with a gun. So I was a little bit more gun happy than I would normally be in other games.
Yeah, so my rules,
Willing to run in front of one.
yeah, well my rules is you get hit and you have to do a death save. If you fail a death save, you take bleed out damage. If you fail the death save by 5 or more, you fall unconscious and you start bleeding out. So it's like you get shot once, like in real life, and it's a problem. Yeah.
Well,
That
that's
sounds
good.
cool.
I mean, in some ways, that's you know, for a lot of Invisible College campaigns, I could see that being more effective because it would make, you know, that type of combat a lot more dangerous to the people involved. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to want to go in, you're going to want to use cover and concealment, you're going to want to have the element of surprise, much like what modern operators do. So they don't just go in like the Doom guy and just
Just shooting everywhere. Yeah.
I mean, that's fun.
I totally endorse this supplement. I think it's going to be a great addition to anybody's Invisible College campaign.
Thank you. That means a lot. Hearing that.
Right. So I don't know. Do we want to? I know it's a bit earlier than we might usually do it, but do we want to go on to the shilling stage of the night before we start on our next topic?
Yeah, that sounds good. How about we let our guests go first?
Sure.
I think that's what we normally do. All right, John. I got the Cowpunchers up there for you and your art art link.
Cool. Yeah, so I have a game. It's called Cowpunchers. It's a D6 dice pool skill-based game. It's straight Western. Takes place in the 1870s, Southwest United States. Is kind of like where I set it. So like Arizona area and everything. People seem to like it, which I'm really surprised. Every time someone buys it and tells me they bought it, I'm like the sweating guy from Key and Peele. You know, like I hope they like it. But people seem to like it. It's copper, almost silver on DriveThruRPG. So and you can get the print copy on DriveThruRPG as well as on Lulu. And yeah, so check it out. And then my art as well. If you're ever looking for an illustrator, you can go to my website there and see examples of my art, and my rates are on there as well. So
Excellent.
Very cool. All right, Pundit, you're up.
Oh, it's my turn, is it? All right. Well, what do you have up there, Job?
Sword and Caravan.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So Sword and Caravan has been doing really, really well. It is currently an Electrum bestseller, which it hit quite quickly, you know, in the first, I mean, it went from nothing to Electrum in like the first month, basically. And everybody has been saying it's excellent. So I'm very happy to hear that. There's been hardly any real critique about it. So be sure to pick it up. I mean, it's medieval authentic adventuring. It's basically system neutral, except for, you know, one chapter which has some new classes for Lion and Dragon, but everything else you can use with any OSR or D&D based game. And it's a big source book full of everything you need to know for adventuring in the Levant, the Holy Land, whatever you want to call it, and across the Silk Road, all the way from Damascus to China in the late 12th century. So you can play through the Third Crusade, and you can march your way across the Silk Road, and you know, there's details on every single city on or near the road. There are tables for encounters and setting up adventures. There's a whole monster section and sections on magic and magic items that are all based, just like Lion and Dragon is based on, you know, medieval authentic sources. This is also based on historically authentic sources from the various cultures of the region. There are going to be supplements for Sword and Caravan. The first one that is going to come out is a kind of, it's a supplement for Sword and Caravan specifically, but it's also a supplement that could be used in any OSR game, which is an expanding of the reaction rules to handle different types of special social interactions in different scenarios. So, you know, using it for haggling, for public speaking, for debates, for presenting yourself at court, for for a legal case, for intimidation, all that kind of thing. You know, it's a beefing up of the reaction rule system so that you can use it in specific situations for resolving complex social interactions. And that's not the only one I'm doing. One of the only criticisms that I've gotten so far about Sword and Caravan is that you know, there's biographies and details about a lot of significant NPCs, right? Some of which you would probably know by name recognition, like Saladin and Richard the Lionhearted, and then others which were like really, and Genghis Khan, I guess, and then others which you would know only if you know, if you're a real expert on the history of the time, but that were very important people in that setting and that are very important kind of in the chronology of the setting period of the campaign. And I give details about them, but I don't stat any of them out, right? So my publisher suggested that I do another short supplement that's going to have expanded biographies and actual Lion and Dragon stats for all of these NPCs that you might end up encountering depending on what type of campaign you're running. So we'll have at least those two and then possibly more coming later on. Meanwhile, also keep checking out RPG Pundit Presents. The latest RPG Pundit Presents that's come out since the last episode of Inappropriate Characters is RPG Pundit Presents number 107, The Northman Sigils, which is a complete system of runic magic that you can use in Lion and Dragon or in any OSR RPG. And you can get that from Spectre Press on drive-thru for $2.99. And yeah, and check out all my other products too. Someone said earlier in the chat that something like that Lion and Dragon is a deeply unappreciated or something like that. A deeply unappreciated RPG, a horribly underrated RPG in his opinion. And well, I'm not sure if it is horribly underrated because it's like a platinum bestseller. You know, that's I don't know if that's underrated. Maybe it is. Maybe it should be like an adamantium bestseller by now. But anyways, Lion and Dragon is something you should check out, and all my other books too. Malachi just asked, what about the next DCC Gonzo compilation? That will be the next big book that Spectre will come out with, but I don't know when it's coming out. And it's going to be basically it's going to be the weird fantasy source book. So it's going to have a compilation of all the Gonzo material that is not adventures and that didn't get in the Last Sun book. The Last Sun book focused on setting elements of the Last Sun. This will focus on all other kinds of stuff, all the other products I did in RPG Pundit Presents that are like weird fantasy mechanics and generators and stuff like that. So it'll be really cool for anyone who's running some kind of a weirder Gonzo fantasy type thing. You could probably use it for people who play Chult and stuff like that, you know. So there you go. But I don't know when it's coming out. It might not come out till the end of this year or sometime next year because Spectre Press takes its time. I guess that's everything for me.
Great. All right, Benji.
Speaking of
gosh.
Chult,
Yeah.
just want to show off the hardcover. It is one thick mother lover. So I got that. Sending books out to, as I was saying in the chat, Kickstarter rewards and pre-sales and people trying to buy it now. I sold maybe 10 of these at VentureCon last weekend. That went really well. I am gonna have a second one. I've already signed the paperwork. I'm gonna do like an official announcement maybe Tuesday. But it won't be another week and a half before the banners for VentureCon 2 are ready. And those are gonna look pretty awesome. I kind of like the one that was gifted to me a few days ago that I'm using now, but just the way that it's shaped with the configuration and the coloring doesn't really work. And I got Monstark, who does a lot of the art in Chult. He's done a lot of art for me since way back when, probably since How to Game Master Like a Fucking Boss came out. Anyway, so yeah, VengereCon was awesome. I talked about it on my blog and my YouTube channel. The next one is going to be about the same time, I believe, July 21st, July 22nd, July 23rd of next year. So hopefully people will come to that. Yeah, I got the latest Schultz one-shot adventure, Rainbow Crystal Utopia, and then and that's on Drive-Thru RPG that got passed through after it's after they had to take a look at it because enough people were offended. I just made a couple small edits, and that's it. And so yeah, that's available. I'm on Subscribestar now. People want to give me $5 a month and get some bonus content. That's basically it. Yeah, that's it.
I gotta say, Venger, that I was a bit cynical about VentureCon, but seeing your reports on it as it was happening, I changed my mind about it because actually having a moderately sized group of gamers hanging out for a weekend and just playing RPGs and hanging out together, eating together and stuff like that, like that actually sounds like a hell of a lot more fun than a lot of cons I've been to, as long as they're all like-minded guys. So I'm betting that you had a fantastic time there, actually. So kudos to you.
Thanks. Yeah, we did. It was a very intimate kind of setting. We got to game with like the same people for like 2 or 3 different sessions, which is kind of nice because then you got more of a feel for what players or game masters are into or looking for. And we got to eat and drink with a lot of these same people and a lot of people that I casually known online, like on Twitter or Facebook or something like that. And it was really cool to put a name to the face and some of their history and whatever they bring to the table, their unusual or very common play styles and game mastering techniques and everything. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I can't wait to do it next year.
Awesome. Job?
All right, sweet. All right, so just I got links to my bloodyhammergames.com on the screen. Book of Antithesis, still selling it. I was originally supposed to be at Gen Con, but I'm not going to be there now because I'm out of the country. I'm visiting France, kind of an impromptu thing. Actually, Pundit, I was going to tell you before the show, but kind of ran out of time, is I spent the day bike riding around Versailles today.
Mm-hmm.
And ended up going to the little Marie Antoinette's hamlet, that little like fake village that she had built at Versailles.
That's cool, man.
I figured you'd have heard of that before. So
What prompted the trip, though? Like what?
Some free time in the schedule. It's my anniversary, but we ended up having
the anniversary.
Yeah, thanks. 5th anniversary. Well, you know my wife.
Yep.
Anyway, so there's that, and then so if you do go to Gen Con, you can pick up the book, Book of Antitheses, and James has got a special going. If you spend $100, which if you buy my book, which is $50, it won't be hard to get there. You can get a free copy of one of the new titles that is going to be there. So Curse of the Daughter Brides and Just a Stupid Dungeon. And then every 4 books you buy, you get 1 book of lesser value free. And he's got some other stuff. If you buy that deck of weird things, if you're ever interested in that one, you get another book free of your choice. So unfortunately, I can't be at Gen Con this year. I really wanted to go, but whatever. France is better.
France is probably better than Gen Con.
Okay. All right. We're done with our shilling.
All right. Some comments from the chat here. Sadwings Raging says, Sword and Caravan supplement on how to build your harem. Calvinoni says, Sword and Caravan is a beautiful book. There was also a historical account of a friar traveling to the Mongol court in one of my channels that fits right in. Timothy Shanks says, most of your RPG Pundit Present scenarios can be used for Sword and Caravan. Yeah, a large number of them can be, absolutely. Jack TH71 says, the NPC book for Sword and Caravan sounds solid. Yeah, I think it'll be a pretty cool, first of all, it'll be a cool historical source book, like a historical book of biographies for people who are into that kind of thing, but then you'll also get, what I think is a good approximation of the stats, of some of these characters. Of course, the two standout guys in the book are going to be Saladin and Richard Lionheart, which were like two of the biggest badasses of their age. It's just quite remarkable that they ended up confronting each other. And really, Richard Lionheart was like the only guy that beat Saladin twice. That was just huge. Let's see here. What else have we got? Victor Gorchev says, love the look of Venture Satanis' book. Lord Mateo says, I got my copy of Chartreuse Shadows, beautiful book. Snowman says, waiting on the hardcover Venture Satanis.
Yeah, you and everybody else. I have to send out, I don't know, I've sent out almost 50 copies so far, and I've got 150 more to send out. So I'll get them all out by the end of August. So it's taken a while. 40 to 50 books per week is what I can manage on my own. So yeah, it's gonna be a little while, but you'll get it in like a month, 5 weeks max.
Timothy Shanks says, I'm thinking AD&D First Edition with the Dark Albion Appendix House Rules. Jack 71 says, Osric and Dark Albion work well together. Yes, I suppose they would, yeah. Dark Albion is also basically system neutral. Like, it's obviously, the game that was made for it is Lion and Dragon, but you could use the Dark Albion book. You can run it with anything, with 5e in theory. Kevin DeJordy says, I'm offended that Venger thought having a single table with his millions of children constitutes a con.
Yeah, I didn't invite any of my family. So all 26, 27 attendees were not related to me.
Lord Mateo says, RPG Pundit, you should come up and run a game next year. Well, you never know, but unless I get somebody pays for my ticket, I don't know if that's too likely. Though I don't know. I guess I could use that as an excuse to get some tobacco.
You know what? If I can get close to 100 attendees, if I can get like at least 85, 90, I would probably be able to afford to send you to VengerCon too.
All right. Well, if you do that, I guess I'll have to go.
I guess you will.
Sadwing's Raging.
Apocalypse will really because you and I together at the same game table, like live. I mean, someone's gonna live stream that shit. That's like end of the world biblical shit.
The salty tears will just end up flooding Seattle,
We'll just have to do like roll-offs for like whose wizard like head explodes first or something.
Yeah. Sadwings Raging says, lovely country, France. It's unfortunate that all the French ruined the place. Raven Wolfgar says, I really need to get a copy of the Book of Antitheses. Really? Does anyone really need to get the Book of Antitheses?
Yes, you haven't gotten one yet. Are you kidding me? Wait, you own one, Pundit.
Really
you own one.
I was given one by James Radger. I'm going to review it eventually.
People ask me, like, online, like, I've heard of this Book of Antithesis thing. Do you think it's worth getting? I'm like, well, Job Bittman wrote it, and he's pretty cool. And, of course, he's also a co-host on Inappropriate Characters. But I also think that the material that's inside it, the content, is just weird and strange and off the beaten track enough that it's definitely something you should own because there's really nothing else like it.
Well, incredibly, Raji said that it's the best-selling one of that batch of like 10 books that he put out at once. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty far ahead.
Malachi says, "Come on, Job, don't you want to try and get into the BIPOC only room? I assume that's at Gen Con.
BIPOC only. Oh my god. Oh, those
you're right.
racist bastards.
Do you know
All
the
right.
Ends Knight says, Pundit, what do you think about the author Thomas Madden's book on the Crusades? I don't think I've read it actually. I didn't need to do a lot of new research on the Crusades because I'd done a lot of research on it before. Jack TH71 says Chalt and Chalt Fuchsia Malaise are both beautiful books. I own both hardbacks.
Yes.
Lord Mateo says we would have to put a bag over RPG Pundit's head with a pipe sticking out of it. Yeah, right, you know, balaclava.
Oh, that's
Like,
true.
do you remember
What?
Subcomandante Marcos from, you know, the gorilla guy from the Yucatan? You know, he was always going around with the balaclava and a pipe. So,
Yeah.
I
What if we-
was
what
in
if we just gave
Mexico
you
during that
oversized
time, and I
sunglasses?
neither confirm nor deny anything about my involvement.
All right.
And
Well, I gotta go,
sadly-
guys.
All right,
It's
we'll
been-
see you
it's
next
been a
time.
great
Benji.
show.
Take
Thanks,
care.
expert. Thanks for coming on.
And thanks for having me.
Yep, absolutely. We'll chat later on Twitter. And
sure.
to everybody else, adios, muchachos.
Take-
See you, man.
Sadwin Jaging says everyone's life goal should be to get killed by the RPG Pundit.
What happened? Oh, no.
Lix Universe says, Pundit, will you one day make a source book for Byzantium? Sometimes I think the Byzantines are treated like the middle stepchild of the medieval age. Well, never say never. I guess it's a possibility. The next medieval authentic book, like the Lion and Dragon setting book that I'm working on right now, that's probably not going to come out until well into next year, is called Baptism of Fire, and it's going to be set during the Christianization of Poland at the start of the 11th century. And it's I guess it's a lot of people who, you know, I haven't actually read the novels or played the video game, but a lot of people who I've told them about it have said this is going to be like having serious Witcher vibes, right? Because it's going to basically be, you know, Christians going around fighting supernatural monsters based on Slavic mythology and pagans that are trying to oppose the Christianization of Poland. Let's see what else. Okay, everybody's saying goodnight to Venger. Now, this is usually the point in the show where we would say, hey, if you want Venger to be allowed to stay up a little bit later, then support us on Patreon. But you know, at this point, we know that's not going to work because we've been saying that for a year now, and we haven't gotten enough.
We need to get a
Enough
new spiel.
Patreon dollars. I don't know if there are enough Patreon dollars in the world for Benji to be able to convince his wife to let him stay up later. So so I'm changing tactics now, right? If we get another like $20 in Patreon dollars a month, then Job will be able to get a Streamlabs account that will mean that we'll stop having all these ridiculous technical errors from him trying to like patch together this weird audio visual system using Google Meetups, you know. So there you go. That's the inspiration. Although I don't know if that'll work either, because I'm thinking that there's at least part of our audience that laughs their ass off every single time we fail to begin on time because of technical problems.
Yeah. The thing, I haven't tried it in a while. The thing that sucks too is if you trim, like there's a way in Google or YouTube Studio to trim out like, you know, part of the show, but then it kills all the live stream content, so you can't see it like on the side anymore. And I don't know. I like reading all the comments. Maybe I'm weird, but
yeah, I like our video being, you know, raw and uncut, you know. So,
yeah.
It's like a feature of the show.
Yeah. So Michael says, I'd like an OSR game set in the antiquities in the same spirit of Lion and Dragon. Well, that's definitely a possibility. You know, I ran a very long historical, authentic Roman campaign back in the day, so I could totally do one that was set in Rome. That's possible to happen, yeah. But we'll see. I'm doing one book at a time right now. So the current one is going to be Poland. And the one that's out right now is Sword and Caravan, which is really fantastic. You know, it is not anything like the Radiant Citadel book that's out now. That is supposedly based on cultures of non-Western origin or whatever, that almost all of them, from what I've seen. Now, I don't actually own the book, obviously, but I have been, since I started talking about it on Twitter, I've had people sending me material, what do you call it, screenshots of pages and things like that. So I've seen all of the actual text describing the Radiant Citadel itself, and a lot of sections of parts of stuff that you find in the adventures in that book, right? And I think it's very funny because it's just so obvious that a lot of the people that wrote this stuff, like they actually, in the book, they castigate you ahead of time as a DM, saying, "Oh, you shouldn't rely on racial stereotypes in your gaming," right? And then they go on to make these adventures that are all basically based on like the shallowest, most superficial and most stereotypical elements of a culture, right? With like, and that these are all people, a lot of them are not actually people from the culture itself, but they're like second or third generation immigrant kids from the United States, or other parts of the first world, let's say, that have ended up, writing what they know because they don't bother to do a lot of research. So they, you've got a ton of stuff about like ethnic foods all over the place. It doesn't help that for whatever reason, because we see this also in like comics and stuff, SJWs are obsessed with food. And somebody said that's because they can't afford to eat anything but ramen noodles or whatever. But
I was gonna say because they are used to bread lines or something. So
yeah, exactly. So and then just like stuff that is like just super stereotypical stuff that it's like that anybody else could have written that ever watched a movie or something based in the place, right? Like there's very little depth to any of this, right? Whereas Sword and Caravan goes into enormous depth about like the actual historical places and the culture and the events and the real monsters and the real magic and all of that stuff. But yeah, so we're going to be talking about Radiant Citadel right now. I don't know if, I suppose that neither of my fellow panelists want to like defend the Radiant Citadel, right? If anyone in the chat does, then feel free to say so.
I don't think we're going to get any takers.
No, I don't think so. Well, hey, if any of, I'm sure that some of our audience, every single episode, are like SJWs that stay totally silent and don't comment at all, but are watching to see if we're going to say something that they can then tweet about how awful we are. So this is your chance, guys. Come forward. Start telling us how Radiant Citadel is actually awesome. Go ahead.
My favorite part
I want to say about Radiant Citadel is it does feel like no one gives a shit about anything Wizard puts out anymore. Like before, it was kind of like they're the fanboys, like, oh, I defend this and blah blah blah. But maybe it's I'm not following the right people on Twitter anymore, talking to the right people. But I don't know. They've just sunk into a joke level. Like I mean, how can anybody take this stuff seriously anymore?
I love watching the 5 YouTubers like defend it and hype it up. It's like, man, you guys are totally paid or something, like why are you excited?
I gotta
about
watch
this?
some of that. That sounds hilarious.
Well, some of them are literally paid, but
Yeah.
a lot of them, what they have is that if you have nothing but exuberant praise for D&D products, then they're going to comp you stuff, so you'll do more of that, right? And so they don't want to get off that bread line of products, as it were, that they get free stuff from Wizards in order to be able to shill it for them, which is like, because Wizards would rather do that than actually pay any of these people, obviously. So yeah, there is some of that. But I find really funny, I pointed this out in one of my videos recently. So I did 2 videos that were very well viewed about Radiant Citadel. And in the first one, I think it was, I pointed out that, no, in the second one, that in the media, in like the gaming media, which nobody reads, right? It gets retweeted by wokeists, but they probably don't read these articles either. But in these articles, it always puts a huge emphasis on the fact that everybody involved in the project is a person of color, right? That it's entirely about, you know, people who are from, you know, who are minorities who have made this book, and how incredible that is, and how like none of the settings are based on Western cultures. It's all, you know, based on the global South, or the global majority, or whatever the term is that they're using for it today. But the actual book, if you look at the book, like if you went to Barnes and Noble, it says nothing about that. There's nowhere that it brags about that. And so like this is a deceptive advertising, right? They're using in their pitching to the Twitter and Tumblr crowd that they want praising them. They go all out about this as if it was the most important thing about the book. In the book itself, like if you read the back cover, if you read the introduction, there's nothing about it. It's like, oh, this is an interdimensional citadel that you have, you know, all these adventures based on all these weird different locations. But it nowhere says, you know, no white people were involved in the making of this book or something like that. You know, like so because they know that if normal people read that, they're going to be like, oh, this is just going to preach at me, and then they won't buy it, right? So they're basically in the book itself, they're hiding that fact in order to trick people into buying the book.
Yeah, and well, trick people into buying the book, and then when they get the book and open it up and realize all the adventures suck and the setting is stupid and it's all just thinly veiled propaganda, they're going to be pissed. I hope that WotC keeps releasing books like this and it just breaks them. That'd be the best thing ever, in my opinion.
Well, it's an interesting trend. Apparently, Wizards book sales have been very gradually declining since about April 2020. But on a very gradual basis, which means that they keep making, and at the same time, if you look at these books, like you look at Candlekeep, and then Ravenloft, and then the Carnival one, I forget what it's even called, The Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and then the Magical School and Starbucks Adventuring, you know, Strixhaven, and then this one. Each one is gradually more woke than the last, right? It's more dedicated to pushing ideology over gaming, and it has less and less gaming, to the point that the last couple, right, like the Carnival of Whatever and Radiant Citadel, have this big emphasis on the adventures not really being about going out and being heroic. They're about like exploring new places, having encounters that you resolve with stuff other than combat, you know, and like you know, all this stuff that is done specifically to be counter to what gamers actually want to do, which is go and fight monsters and be heroes, right? So what I think we're going to be seeing, we've already been seeing it, but it's going to keep accelerating because they're accelerating the wokeness, and that's going to accelerate the decline of sales. And at some point, we're going to hit like the crucial point where stuff starts to really collapse. I'm kind of amazed that it's not further along than it is, but the fact is that you know, like, and it took me a while to figure this out, is that they really do have this kind of two-pronged advertising, right? Like the advertising they do on social media, where they like are really blatant about the wokeness, and then when they're selling the product to normal people, they hide all that, you know. So people are still buying it and then getting disappointed. And of course, nerds are completists, right? So a lot of people only play 5th edition and they don't know that you can get other books. So they like keep buying these books, even though each one is disappointing them more than the last one did, you know.
Yeah. Hey, we got sorry to interrupt you. We got a super chat from Snowman0147, $5. Thank you very much, Snowman. So it says, hello, basic expert.
Hello.
You know what would be cool? An OSR version of the Urban Arcana from D20 Modern.
I never played D20 Modern, but you know who'd be interested in that is Vic here in the chat. He's constantly talking about that in like Urban Arcana stuff and that kind of thing. But I think that'd be cool. I like modern fantasy stuff too. It's fun. That's why
I'll be a big sock bucket. I don't recognize this guy.
But that's why I have Invisible College, because you know I like that kind of stuff too.
It is a modern urban magic game, right? So
yeah,
it's kind of that. It doesn't have like elves and dwarves in a modern day setting. I think Urban Arcana did have that, you know. But if you want like a game with like occult conspiracies and weird magical occult stuff and modern day adventuring and guns and all that, then Invisible College is a good choice. Also in the chat, St. Michael says, basic experts tweet making fun of the Mexican caricature art from Citadel. It's hilarious. Can you tell us a bit about that?
So there's art in the book of an NPC, and it's literally just a dude with like a sombrero on, and he's holding a rooster, and he has like his like white tunic. He has like his Speedy Gonzalez clothes on with like corn hanging from his sash, and it's just
the chicken, right?
Yeah, and he has like a basket full of like produce, and it's just amazing to me. I just thought it was, because I don't really care about stereotypes. I really don't. I don't care if you want to make something like that, but the moment you tell people you can't do this, and then you go around and do it yourself, I'm gonna flame you for it, because you deserve it. Like you can't even follow your own rules, so you deserve to get dragged.
Totally. That's from the Mexican themed adventure.
Yes.
It's the Hollow Mine, I think it was called. And yeah, that's like, again, they tell people do not do this, and then they do it, because it's okay when they do it, because they're the special people. So
well, because they had the minority groups apparently that they're doing a caricature of, do the caricature, and I don't know if that's actually worse. I said that as well. Like, I don't know if is that worse? Like, you get someone of Mexican descent and then make them draw like the caricature.
You have these people that are extremely untalented, and a lot of them, like I looked at this. There's a thread about this on the RPG site. A lot of these people have no game design credits to their name in RPGs, right? And a lot of them apparently were hired just because they're like friends of Ajit George, who's the guy who was in charge of the project, who himself has very few design credits, right? He did something in Ravenloft, and then he immediately, proposed doing this book that was all, non-Western cultures, and Wizards, the Wizards SJWs immediately hired him on the spot to do it, I said that it's like, this is basically like a modern day leftist minstrel show, right? And these people are putting on the equivalent of blackface, right? Like Mexican face, I guess, in this case, right? to entertain leftists by presenting them not just a stereotype, but the stereotype that leftists imagine these settings, these places in the real world to be like, right? So like that adventure, the adventure that has the Mexican peasant guy art in it, right? It's like a fantasy Mexico world that it's a place where everybody worships basically Santa Muerte. They don't call her that, but it's the same thing. The Dia de los Muertos is a celebration of the death goddess, and also a political event where they criticize the oligarchy that runs the place, but it is by no means anything Catholic, and there's not a hint of Catholicism in it, which is, of course, any Mexican would tell you is a pretty crucial part of real Mexican culture. And the whole history and present day of that region is presented in a way that will please Yankee leftists, right? Like the place was, they mention how like 3 centuries ago, the place was invaded by colonizers. They don't even name them. They just say colonizers. And they're presented as having been unequivocally evil, and they don't mention anything about, having stopped human sacrifices or stuff like that, and then like the present day of that setting is like something out of a bad Pancho Villa movie or something, right? Like it's ruled by self-serving landowners. It's full of impoverished peasants, and there's heroic revolutionaries that are pure moral champions and not just, gangsters or some shit like that, right? Like they're the real champions of the people there, and to top it all off, like the demon that is responsible for all the events that happen in that adventure is a demon called Pazuzu. Now, Pazuzu is a real demon in mythology, but he's not a Mexican demon. It's a Mesopotamian demon, right? And probably the guy that wrote the adventure didn't even know that. He probably just got it from The Exorcist, because Pazuzu is in the movie The Exorcist, right? So this shows you the level of knowledge or lack thereof that these people have, So like the whole thing is It is. It's a minstrel show for modern day wokeists, and it's it's almost like the people that participated in this should probably be ashamed of themselves.
I critiqued some of the art a while back. Like it had the Dia de los Muertos stuff going on, and I saw in the background it had like some of the Aztec gods, and I'm like, oh, okay, so do the Aztec gods exist in D&D? Does that mean that like Tlaloc exists? And if that's true, then were these people on the Citadel like sacrificing children to Tlaloc and all that stuff? Like WotC's never going to talk about that, but
there is another adventure, not the one that we're talking about with the peasant guy, but there's another one that's like set in Aztec Mexico, right? Mexica, right? And like I haven't gotten a lot of details about that. If someone wants to share that with me, feel free. But I'm guessing it's going to be trash also. Yeah. But I think I saw like the artwork you're talking about, which is like this very frou-frou type Aztec deity or something,
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tiefling, of course, too. So I don't know what their obsession is with tieflings.
I went through the chat.
Right.
Sorry.
No,
I was going to say, I just went back through the chat to get some of the best comments about Radiant Citadel. So Maliki says, I want to run a game and stream it online where players start a revolution in the Radiant Citadel. Kevin DeJordi says, can Wizards please give us English back and quit culturally appropriating it? Lord Mattia said, I think you might be right, Job. WotC supporters seem to have gone silent since this release. Sadwin Wings Raging, Taco of Healing. Maliki said, the day it came out, my FLGS had 6 copies. This past Friday when I was there, he had 6 copies.
Yeah, maybe this is the one that finally tanks them. I don't know. That might be too optimistic, but it's possible.
Yeah. Rational Ginger says, all the 5e books have been less and less valuable as time has gone on. Tasha's was super questionable.
Yeah, Tasha's was a long time ago, So.
Yeah. Victor Korchev says, none of the recent products have sold well. People brag that about how well 5e is doing or talking about the core book selling.
Yeah, largely that's right.
Yeah. Adino the Esnite says, Tasha's was the beginning of the end for 5e, it feels like to me. And then Elix Universe said, the Radiant Citadel felt literally like a visit to a local mall food court. I'm a Venezuelan, and it's really baffling the ignorance about folklore. Just look up El Silbon, the Whistler, for example. And then Victor said this too. I hope you heard of this one, Ben Pundit, because I don't know what this is. Victor says, did you guys see that the evil hat guy was bragging about how amazing the food in Radiant Citadel is?
Yeah, I did see that. I actually I retweeted that with some comment. I forget what my comment was, but it was like it wasn't good, But yeah, no, it's not. It's what it's like. It's like the food court at like some kind of state fair or Disneyland or something where they have like food of the world, and it's like you have some Americans who've never been anywhere going, oh, it's also diverse and wonderful, like and anybody from there is looking at this and going, oh, this is all crap,
It's Cultural Appreciation Day in the public school gymnasium.
Yeah, totally. That's an excellent example. Okay, this is what I responded to Rob Donahue. I said, the real appeal of Radiant Citadel is as an eat, pray, love campaign for white leftists, using designers with ethnic backgrounds to present a minstrel show style fetishization of other cultures.
Yeah, that was an epic response. I like that one.
Yeah, it's sad.
Well, mining for
Jeffrey Garrison said, hang on. Jeffrey Garrison says Mexican face. That's like sugar skulls, right? Timothy Shanks.
Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
No, this is not Radiant Citadel related, but Timothy Shanks says, Pundit, does your Invisible College have batshit crazy dark Albion elves show up? No, but it does have, goetic demons and other weird entities. So you get a lot of that. Yeah, the Venezuelan one. Sorry, because Lix Universe said I'm Venezuelan, and it's really baffling the ignorance about folklore. The person who did there's a Venezuelan setting in Radiant Citadel, and the person who did that is again a second or third generation Venezuelan American, and they were bragging everywhere about the fact that they have arepas in their setting. I think that's the big selling point, right? Arepas, and you get the hint that this is a person that might not actually speak any Spanish, and the person, I looked up a lot of these people, and there's like more than one of them, the Venezuelan setting person, and then who else was it? There's another person that their day job is that they write cookbooks, right? So like the Venezuelan person is a cookbook writer, and there's somebody else who's like a vegan cookbook writer by profession, and so it's just fucking bizarre, right? It's crazy, these people.
I found another question for Basic Expert when I was mining for comments here. So Adino the Esnite says, Basic Expert, do you have a preferred genre of tabletop gaming like fantasy, or do you like it at all?
I like fantasy. That's probably the main one.
It all. Sorry, not like it at all. Like it all. Do you like
I
it
hate
all?
all of it. I don't know why I'm here. I like fantasy. That's probably the main one, but I love sci-fi too. Like I was running a Classic Traveler game, and I want to get it back up again on a Gilded server that I run. So, which people should check out. I have a fun Gilded server where we talk about OSRs and old school gaming and just gaming in general. So,
How do you find that?
it's on my channel. It might be on my link tree as well. So
okay, and everyone, John's link tree is in the show notes.
But it's a cool place. But I think like fantasy and sci-fi are the two that I really am drawn to and care about. But I do love, I play Call of Cthulhu every once in a while too. I really love that. I love that 1920s Lovecraftian era as well. There's something fun about that.
Jack TH in the comments says, Pazuzu has a vacation house in fantasy South America.
I think that's in one of the codices, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. What else have we got here? Some guy, Viktor Gorchev says, some guy compared Radiant Citadel's food culture to NYC. I asked if the streets were as disgusting as NYC's too. Well, Ajit George in an interview said that the Radiant Citadel itself, like the central hub of the setting, that the society there, he claims, is supposed to be based on modern day New York, right? Which I think is actually, it's based on what leftist utopian fantasies of modern day New York would be, right? Everything is just different, 27 different ethnic enclaves. There's no police. They've defunded the police. The government is based on consensus. They mind control anyone that disagrees with them. They have enormous taxes and food lines,
Tariffs.
And,
I have a video coming out on Monday, and I rant about the tariffs in the game because that just like irked me. I'm kind of an econ nerd as well, so like I read that first part of the Radiant Citadel, and I was like, this is written by economic illiterates. This is stupid.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin DeJordy says, cookbook writer ranks lower than blogger. So yeah, like one of the things that I find hilarious about this is that, there are a lot of comparisons going on between the Radiant Citadel and Sigil, the core setting of Planescape, and these guys obviously didn't plan to do it this way, right? But when you consider, if you imagine that the text of Radiant Citadel is like in-game text written by the people in power in the Radiant Citadel, like, oh yeah, everything is wonderful here, nobody needs money, and everyone has enough food, and we do restorative justice, there's no police force, and we have huge tariffs on the wealthy, and that takes care of everything, and we have local community guards that will deal with anybody causing trouble, if you read all that as like propaganda of what, and then read into it what the place is really like, and then there's the fact that it's like gates that go that are all based on. If you look at it, that right, third world shithole of Planescape. You guys with me there?
You kind of cut
you're
out a little
breaking
bit.
up a little bit. Was he breaking up for you, John?
Yeah, he was breaking up for me a little bit there. But
Oh,
I
okay.
think what I got gleaned from it was that the way I would run Radiant Citadel is, yeah, everything written in the book is propaganda, and then you get there and it's just absolutely awful and terrible. And it's like when people visit North Korea and they take them to like the fake towns where they pretend like this is what the rest of North Korea looks like, and then they boot you out really quick because they don't want you to see what it's really like. Like that's that's how I would envision it.
Yeah, well, what it's really like is like either the Chaz during 2020 in Seattle, or it's like Caracas, like Venezuela under Maduro. Like that seems so similar to what you'd have to read into the propaganda. So again, basically, the Radiant Citadel is unintentionally the third world shithole version of Planescape. Like unbelievable. Sadwings Racing says Chop. Yeah, that's right. They changed Chaz to Chop.
Changing your name won't help. But yeah, I don't see how the Radiant Citadel has any real playable content in it. And I think that's probably just as offensive as anything else in there. Because I read through a little bit of it, and I looked at it and I'm like, this is just, how can anyone, I don't know how much the physical book is, but it just seems like a waste of a tree because there's just nothing playable to it. So it just begs the question, like, does WotC even intend people to run this as a game at this point?
Well,
like, I don't think so. It seems like coffee table books to me at this point.
Yeah, it largely is. It's stuff that's been written for people who are not actual gamers, right? It's written for people who want to have products that are made to appeal to their ideological sentiments, and that almost never, if ever, do any actual gaming, right? But it's also meant in a way to like punish regular gamers, to say, well, the type of gaming you do is wrong, and this is what you should be doing. We know you're not going to, but you should be doing it like this. So like, again, a lot of the adventures actively punish people trying to be like heroic and resolving things with combat. In a lot of them is not the viable option. The first level adventure gets resolved by like a chili eating contest. So like it's just fucking ridiculous.
I saw one where it was like a prawn cooking contest or something. You had to catch giant prawns.
That's also it's the night market adventure, the Thailand night market. It's the first level adventure, and they even set it up so like in the Radiant Citadel itself, because of the magic crystal that the Radiant Citadel is built around, all healing magic is always cast at maximum effect, and you don't need material components for resurrection, right? So it's set up so that you basically there's zero risk of death in the game.
That's boring. No wonder games last 6 sessions.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it gets that far. I'm surprised they get past session 0 in character creation and filling out consent forms.
That's the average length, right? Which means that half of all 5e campaigns last less than 6 sessions.
It's true.
It's really crazy. All right. So if anybody has any other comments to make or any other questions for the basic expert or anybody else that is still here, anybody except Venger, feel free to ask them now, because otherwise we're going to start wrapping up here. Remember to subscribe if you haven't subscribed to Inappropriate Characters. Check out my channel and subscribe to that, and Check out the Basic Expert. The links are going to be in the description. Oh, they're already in the description. So you can check out the Basic Expert's YouTube channel, and his link tree is there, so you can connect to everything he's doing too. And I guess if you really want to, you can subscribe to Venger's channel too. Cabin DeJordy says 6 sessions is session 0, and each player telling everyone else about their character for an entire session.
That 36-page backstory.
Yeah. Which is, of course, done as a substitute for actually, for a character that you're never going to play long enough to have him develop his own personality, So you have to come in preloaded with some ridiculous, fan fiction backstory.
I've never had that happen to me, but I would throw that character sheet out or that backstory out and be like, you have 1 hit dice. What could you possibly have done that warrants 36 pages?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What are you thinking?
Yeah. Well, in campaigns where you have, if you run campaigns that last 50 sessions or more, that's not necessary.
Well, my current campaign is fantasy. We're using like Rule Cyclopedia and Basic Fantasy kind of mashed together a little bit. Yeah. And the guys are like at level 4 already. We've been playing, I think it's coming up on almost a year now in this particular campaign. And it was funny because they made their characters and they're just like, I'm Fighter Man. And they've kind of, again, developed their characters as they've gone on and developed who they are. And it's way more fun that way than playing 6 sessions and quitting.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. Like I've said many times, until you've played a campaign for at least 200 hours, you haven't really discovered the full potential of what RPGs do.
Mm.
Lix Universe says, Pundit, could you elaborate on the inevitable collapse of Wizards of the Coast at the current pace it's taking? What do you think would happen to the OGL when there's nobody to enforce it or allow it? Well, first of all, we can't say it's inevitable. There's a chance that because what's happening is I don't think there's going to be a sudden and catastrophic collapse. I think that we've been seeing a gradual decline, and then what's going to happen is that there's going to be at some point an accelerated decline, and it all depends on just how carefully the Hasbro overlords of Wizards of the Coast are paying attention, right? Like how much they give a shit. Because if they are paying attention and they start to see that, then they might smarten up. Like we've seen other places that have been taken over by Wokis where we've now seen the corporate suits come in and say, no, hang on, screw this. You guys aren't going to keep spending large amounts of money to make stuff nobody's going to watch or nobody's going to buy, right? And have like kind of put a halt to it and have started to say, well, now we want you to make products that are actually going to sell. Netflix even is doing that, right? So there is a possibility that they could turn that around. That would require some purges, obviously. But if not, then I think what could also happen is that the acceleration could increase enough and the decline could speed up enough that you hit some kind of critical point where Wizards says, okay, you know what? Or not Wizards, but Hasbro says, you know what? We're just going to stop making more D&D stuff. But that doesn't mean that the OGL stops existing, first of all, because there is the open gaming license is set up in such a way that it can't ever be removed, right? Like that was part of what 4th edition was about, was that it was an edition that was not under the OGL because it was sufficiently different from D&D so that people couldn't make unlicensed products for 4th edition, right? But 5th edition is under the OGL because everything in it can be justified under the OGL, and obviously anything from the OSR is. So that won't really change very much for anybody if, let's say, Hasbro says, well, you know what, we're just shuttering D&D at this point, and we're not going to. We might start doing it again in 10 years, but we're not going to do any new D&D products. So really, what would happen is that obviously you'd probably get a lot of people that only played 5e that would just stop buying new stuff, and a lot of them would probably stop playing. the other thing that could happen is that the D&D fad could die, right? Like sooner or later it will, because right now it's still a fad, right? There's a lot of people that are playing it just because it's become kind of cool to play, right? And those people aren't going to stick around, odds are, after that, you know. And after that, you'll get probably some companies that'll try to make D&D substitutes, and one of them, you know, in a similar way to what happened with Paizo, might actually, you know, strike it rich, making something that is similar enough to 5th edition that a lot of former 5th edition players will play that, and it may or may not be woke depending on the company, right? And the other thing is that the OSR will keep benefiting from that. You know, like the OSR, it started before 4th edition, but it took off during 4th edition, right? In the same way that Pathfinder did. So just as a lot of people went to Pathfinder, there were other people that went to the OSR, and that's when it became really successful, you know. So I think that's, you know, I'm not sure anything of value will be lost, except that there will be less new players coming in. And there is a certain value in being able to get some of those new players. I think it's a small percentage that end up looking at other stuff and discovering stuff like the OSR, you know, and that's nice, but it's not strictly speaking necessary. And there will be other people coming in afterwards, regardless, you know. But yeah, the OGL won't be affected by that. That's the genius of the OGL. St. Michael says, what happened to Dom Publishing? Just got Fantastic Heroes and Witchery and really enjoyed the book. Yeah, Fantastic Heroes and Witchery came out before Dark Albion, and then Dom published Dark Albion, Lion and Dragon, Cults of Chaos, and the thing is that Dom Publishing is basically a one-man operation, Dominique Crusade, and he's basically, at least for the long term, these last few years, and there's no sign of that abating, has been too busy with other stuff in his life to make any more RPG books, which is why, you know, I did Pundit Presents through Spectre Press and Star Adventure, and now I'm doing Sword and Caravan with Mad Scribe Games. So I don't know. I don't think there's not likely to be new Dom books anytime soon, and you know, obviously, I that's a pity because he made very nice books, visually nice books, and interesting books. But and we hope he'll pick it up again at some point. But right now, he's not in a place to do it. Let's see, anything else? Question for the basic expert: how far along are you with your Sword and Sorcery Cowpunchers game?
Yeah, so I'm converting Cowpunchers, so the same rule system for that, to be like a skill-based Sword and Sorcery style, human-centric game, and it's almost done. I got to finish doing some like magic items and some monsters, and then let people read over it and, you know, filter out, help me edit it and filter out all the stupid things that I say and don't make sense. And it'll then illustrate it. I'm going to illustrate it myself. So it'll be a while. I'm not sure exactly when, but it's further along than a lot of my other stuff that I'm working on is. So.
All right. Timothy Schenk says, it kind of sucks that some judge arbitrarily decided you can't copyright rules. Remember back in the 80s, TSR was threatening to sue everyone. Well, that judgment in American law is older than the 80s, I'm pretty sure. Like, it already existed. Like, TSR, and for that matter, Wizards of the Coast, can sue you for using proprietary materials. So that if you, well, obviously, if you just cut and paste stuff from a 5e book and then publish that, but more importantly, if you use proprietary monsters, like if you have a Mind Flayer and you call it a Mind Flayer, for example, they could sue you for that. And obviously, if you use their logos, right? If you use the Wizard logo or the Dungeons and Dragons logo, they could sue you for that. But they can't sue you for using rules, right? As long as you rewrite them yourself. But yeah.
Wasn't there a whole suit against like Osric back in the day about that too, kind of? I might be misremembering.
There was a lawsuit against Osric. We'd have to ask the Osric guy. I think there was. I think there might have been like some kind of legal threat done, but it didn't end up coming to anything. But I might be remembering wrong. Because again, there's nothing, OSRIC is based on the open gaming license, right? There's nothing they could do about it,
I do think that WotC is released because I have my first edition D&D books and I have my rule encyclopedia, and they're all print-on-demand books from Drive-Thru RPG, and I know those weren't always available. And I do think it's the OSR putting pressure on Wizards in a lot of ways. Where like, we got to compete with this. Let's just release the old stuff.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Because I mean, the OSR started with just what were called the clone books, right? Which were, like OSRIC, for example, and Labyrinth Lord. They're just copies of those old rules, right? They don't add anything new, really. And they were important at the time, because at that time it was when those books were all out of print, obviously, and getting harder to find in the secondhand market, and there was no print on demand of these books from Wizards of the Coast, right? So they were making this stuff, and it was selling well because people wanted those rules and couldn't find cheap or nice looking copies of the older books. And then Wizards came out with all of that because they really, and print on demand, when they stopped worrying about piracy and just said, yeah, okay, we're going to make money off this no matter what, and we're losing money by not doing it. So they started making it. And I don't know if that was specifically, I don't think it was because they were afraid of the OSR or something like that, but it was because maybe through the OSR, they saw that there was a viable market for that, for that to sell, right? And so they said, yeah, okay, we might as well do that, And of course, the effect of that is that it makes the clone books, like I don't get why, for example, Old School Essentials, which came out much later, is so hugely popular when it's still basically a clone system. Now you can just get the rule encyclopedia, dude. Like why would you need that, right?
Or Basic Fantasy's free.
Yeah, it made the OSR switch from being like these ultra reactionaries that said no, we only use the rules as they were purely made in the old times, into like stuff like, well, it started with James Raggi and then me and then a few other people that said no, let's change these rules into like really weird and unusual things that are specific to certain genres or specific to certain settings, or that introduce innovative mechanics that still have an old school feel to them, right? And that's how the OSR ended up becoming the most important RPG design movement maybe ever, and certainly the most important one right now. The most creativity in game design is happening in the OSR.
I agree with that. I think that's true.
Yeah, me too.
Victor Gorchev says OSE is popular because of its streamlining. Well, okay, yeah, fair enough.
It does have really beautiful layout inside.
I was going to say, I think it's the art and the layout. Yeah, Malachi says, and the layout. Yeah.
It's easy to find. It's reference stuff. I have the PDFs of it. It is good. I have Old School Essentials Advanced, and it is. I mean, that's kind of cool because it's kind of like a mashup between BX and AD&D, like, forcing them together. But no one says you couldn't do that on your own anyways. But
yeah, Lix Universe says OSE is easier to read than the Rule Encyclopedia or Labyrinth Lord. Right? Okay, so that makes sense. Maybe it's presented in an easier format to actually find the rules you're looking for, which is a problem if you've ever read, the Rule Encyclopedia is in some places is badly organized, but that's nothing compared to like the AD&D books, right? Like those ones, there are some rules that show up like in the weirdest places, and you have to really like, I mean, the Pro SR has made this whole religious ceremony out of trying to find obscure rules in weird places and giving them way more emphasis than they deserve,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so okay, that's fair enough for old school thinking.
OSC also gives you kind of, I guess, like Sword and Wizardry do this too, though, but ascending and descending AC. I know people are afraid of descending AC, but yeah, gives you both.
Yeah, well, I've been using ascending for so long. All of my games use ascending AC because it seems more intuitive. Victor Gorchev says only elite level Bro SR people can decipher the sacred texts. Yeah, that's what they did. It's funny. Mhm. I was very shocked though. There's this Twitter account that's like got a huge hate on for the Bro SR and
Go SR?
for the Bro SR, yeah. And that this account has been doing a lot of posting and frequently mentions me in the posts because I've been critical of the Bro SR, right? And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever, right? But then like the dude uncovered a bunch of like tweets from Jeffro Johnson that has some very questionable stuff there, where he says some unfortunate things about Jews and uses some very derogatory language against certain other groups. And I was like, I never saw that, until now. We had him on this show. If we ever have Jeffro Johnson again, we'll have to ask him about that. Because,
what did you mean?
That's pretty fucked up, man.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Pretty gross, actually.
Yeah.
So, the Bro SR has always had this weird mix of ultra reactionary ideology with like, bodybuilder culture and ridiculous, excessive hyper machismo, and then like obsessive fundamentalism about, AD&D being the perfect system,
I don't think they lift.
Playing it rules as written, even though speaking as someone who played AD&D when it was the only edition, or the main edition of that was basic at the time too, right? But nobody played AD&D rules as written in the old school era. Like that was just not what you did.
Cal says I have it on sources. The Bro SR is just trolling us. I think there's two original founders of the Bro SR before the current leadership that I think were trolling. You can look at their old posts and be like, these guys are just messing with people. I don't know if they're trolling at this point though. the current guys.
That's always the problem with these sorts of things. There's it often starts with trolling, and then there's some people that join it totally seriously, and that's where you're like, oh shit.
I knew that Jeffro probably has been playing about as long as I have, or maybe even less, when he said the satanic panic was justified. He said that in a tweet fairly recently, I think. And I'm like, man, you were not playing AD&D when this was going on. That proves it right there. This is all new to you.
He admits as much that he wasn't an old school gamer. And he's like never played a D&D campaign that lasted more than a couple of months or something like that, so it's like, Jesus, please get back to me when you ran Rule Cyclopedia for 10 years like I did.
Yeah.
Raven Wolfgar says the Bro SR, their parents failed them. Victor Gorsev says even Gygax didn't play rules as written. That's right. He probably never played AD&D rules as written. And towards the end of his life, he basically made a bunch of suggestions of how to run, D&D that amounts to like modern, second wave OSR thinking, right? It's like modify the rules in ways to make it, rulings over rules and something streamlined,
I pointed that out when you had Jeffro on your stream. I made a comment in there that like there's a lot of blog posts out there, and Gygax himself saying in interviews how he ran his game, and he often ran, at least later in life, it was OD&D with some house rules on it, so it wasn't even AD&D. And I think you read it to Jeffro, and he just sort of dismissed it like, well, anything later in life, it doesn't count because he wasn't as relevant. And I was like, okay.
Gary Gygax was only the one true prophet between like 1978 and 1981. Like the rest of the time was just some dude who didn't know what he was talking about. It's funny. All right. Well, I guess that's it for shitting all over the Bro SR.
They're gonna come after me on Twitter now. I already duked it out with them before, but also I muted them, so I don't care.
Jeffro's been laying pretty low since somebody dug up his comments about Jews. All right. So, any other questions, or should we call it a night, guys?
Yeah, let's call it a night. So, when's our next show? It's going to be see, the 28th, August 28th.
Is that right? August 28th? Because this is the 31st, so in 4 weeks. Yep. 28th, Sunday, 28th of August. Mark your calendars. That'll be the next Inappropriate Characters. Don't know yet if we'll have a guest star or what we're going to do, but we'll see you all then. Thank you very much to the Basic Expert for guest starring on the show. We'll probably have you back sometime, maybe when you actually come out with some more OSR material instead of your weird school systems.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think thank you guys for having me on it. It's
Oh, Kevin DeJordy says there's never enough IC. You're right. There is never enough Invisible College.
Oh my
Thank
God.
you.
The chat is learning how to stop you from ending a show. Pull out the pundit's ego a little bit and he'll go all night.
Well, I think Kevin DeJordy might have meant Inappropriate Characters, but I choose to believe it was in Invisible College. Oh, he says both apply. Excellent. Well done.
Oh, okay. So there you go.
All right, guys. So
All
we'll
right.
see you all on the 28th of August. Thank you very much for watching. And again, subscribe, support us on Patreon. Check out my channel, buy my books, check out the Basic Expert, subscribe to his channel. And yeah, we'll see you later.
See ya.
see ya.
Just sit tight 1 second and be quiet.